Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video right here that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this is going to be my final fight breakdown, my final fight analysis, and my final fight prediction of the very big fight that's going to be happening this weekend between that of Mr. Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. And for those of you, of course, that do not know or are not aware, this is a unification match. So this is going to be for all the marbles. This is going to be for every single one of the titles in that of the light heavyweight division to, I believe, create the first undisputed or completely undisputed light heavyweight champion within that of the history of boxing. And this, of course, pretty much is the era of the undisputed champions. But, of course, this is to add on, yet again, another undisputed champion of this era. But anyways, this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight. And, of course, a lot of people, they're having a little bit of a problem deciding who maybe is going to win this fight. In my personal view, this is really as close as a 50-50 level fight as this gets. And not only because both of these guys, in my view, are phenomenal level boxers. When you talk about it, of course, both in my personal view on the top 10 pound for pound list. But when you talk about what they both bring to the table in order to possibly counter the other fighter, Dmitry Bivol, in my view, has pretty much everything that he needs to, at least mainly to try and counter that of an Artur Beterbiev. And Artur Beterbiev, in my personal view, has everything, almost everything anyway, in order to try to perfectly counter that of a Dmitry Bivol. In my personal view, if you're going to beat either one of these fighters, then you have to bring the type of style or the type of fight to the table that I expect both of these gentlemen to bring, which is what I expect Dmitry Bivol more than likely to be the boxer within this fight. And I do expect Artur Beterbiev to be a little bit more of the quote-unquote brawler, or at least the one that's going to bring the fight to Dmitry Bivol a little bit. Now, according to the naked eye, to a lot of people, at least a certain amount of people that like to like to break down boxing in a much more simple way, a lot of people may just take a look at this fight as a quote-unquote boxer versus a brawler. But to be quite honest with you, I think that even though this fight is going to have a little bit of that, I do have to give credit to both fighters in the all-around game. Meaning what? That I think that Artur Beterbiev, even though he gets labeled as a freight train quite a bit, and it's an accurate description because he runs through a lot of his opponents. But a lot of people, they take a look at Artur Beterbiev and they think that, he's just this one-dimensional pressure fighter that really can't do much else, and that he pretty much is just nothing but power and athleticism. And in my personal view, that is not the case. Artur Beterbiev, for those of you that do not know, he has an excellent Olympic and amateur pedigree. He has a great boxing background, even in the Olympics. I believe that he even defeated Alexander Usyk in that of the amateurs. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I believe that he did end up getting the victory over that of Alexander Usyk. Dmitry Bivol, of course, also has that of a great Olympic and amateur pedigree as well. Part of that of the Soviet program. But the reason why I wanted to state this is because a lot of people take a look at Artur Beterbiev as if he's just some freight train that is pretty much one-dimensional and he can't really do much else other than pressure you, and he's pretty much all power. I remember when Artur Beterbiev, when he fought that of a Marcus Brown, and a lot of people thought that he was just going to possibly lose to Marcus Brown because Marcus Brown was going to show Artur Beterbiev, the elite skill set, and he wasn't going to be able to handle the movement. And I remember a certain amount, especially the LDBC and new media channels, or a lot of the African-American boxers that were watching Artur Beterbiev versus Marcus Brown, who were clearly cheering for Marcus Brown, that didn't know much about Artur Beterbiev. They expected Artur Beterbiev to be a lot more one-dimensional than what he actually was. And then he proved to be a very intelligent pressure fighter, someone that, yes, he does prefer to break his opponents down, but someone that has a high degree of intellect and someone that has a high degree of athleticism, of course, but someone that breaks down his opponents very intelligently and very incrementally. And I remember Dmitry Bivol, who's also been underestimated in certain abilities, even though he's looked at as a very, very great boxer. But I remember when he was about to fight Canelo Alvarez, and also, interestingly enough, from a lot of the LDBC and the media, or a lot of certain people, I remember they thought that Dmitry Bivol, that he wasn't going to have the power, that he was not going to have the athleticism, and that he was just going to have this super simple, Soviet or Eastern European style. And then, of course, he went in there against Canelo Alvarez and pretty much dominated him. Now, Canelo, in my view, still gave Dmitry Bivol the toughest fight so far of his career. But, to be fair, Dmitry Bivol, he did end up giving Canelo Alvarez a very, very great fight, and he pretty much dominated the fight. Of course, one could argue that he should have because of the size difference, but, still, it is what it is. But the thing is that both of these guys, in my personal view, they have been a little bit underestimated in certain abilities. Dmitry Bivol, in my personal view, is a much greater athlete than what a lot of people give him credit for. He's very quick of foot, he's very quick of hand speed, and on top of that, he has a lot more punching power than what a lot of people really want to give him credit for. For those of you that don't know, David Benavidez, who of course is looked at as the Mexican monster these nowadays, David Benavidez, I believe, sparred that of Dmitry Bivol. I'm not quite sure if he sparred that of Artur Beterbiev, but he also fought Alexander Gvozdyk recently, and Alexander Gvozdyk is a relatively hard puncher, and David Benavidez said that even in sparring, that Dmitry Bivol punched harder than Alexander Gvozdyk. Alright, and Gvozdyk was able to hurt, or at least stun, Artur Beterbiev a couple of times within that fight. And once again, Artur Beterbiev is a smarter boxer than what a lot of people give him credit for. So, what I will state is this, in my personal view, whichever way this fight goes, whether it's Dmitry Bivol winning by unanimous decision, or a split decision, or stoppage, or Artur Beterbiev winning by unanimous decision, or split decision, or stoppage, I'm not really going to be super shocked or surprised whichever way this goes, because I do think that this fight is pretty much as close to a 50-50 level fight as you can get. And whoever is the winner of this fight, in my personal view, they will be very deserving of being within the top 5 pound for pound, if not even potentially within the top 4 or the top 3. Right now, my top pound for pound list, it has Alexander Usyk at number 1. I have Crawford at 2. Of course, you could interchange either of those names in my personal view. And then right after that, I have Naoya Inoue and Canelo Alvarez. You also could interchange, in my personal view, some of those names. Anyone within that top 4, you can somewhat debate, in my view, is the number 1 pound for pound fighter, at least somewhat. But right now, the best case, in my view, is either Usyk or Terence Bud Crawford. But right after that, at the number 5 spot, I have Mr. Artur Beterbiev, because of what he's been able to do, his dominance, and on top of that, his resume at the light heavyweight class, and him winning 3 of the official belts. If he ends up defeating Dmitry Bivol, or if Bivol ends up defeating that of an Artur Beterbiev, one of these guys very potentially might have to jump up a couple spots on the pound for pound list. Probably not quite at the number 1 pound for pound spot, but, relatively close. You could have a great debate that even debatably that the winner of this fight could even jump up to number 2. If you really wanted to. Some may even debate that they could jump up to number 1. I'm not quite sure if I would place them that high just because it's one weight class, but it's up to you. But they definitely would deserve to be within the top 5 pound for pound. I don't even think that that's a debate. But anyways, enough of, me rambling on about it. If you're asking me who I personally believe is going to win this fight before we go into the breakdown and the analyzation of why I believe that certain things are the way that they are, I'm going to very tentatively and very carefully select Mr. Artur Beterbiev in order to win this fight, more than likely by that of a latter round stoppage, or more than likely by that unanimous decision, or majority decision, and I'm going to reveal why as the video goes along. But once again, if Dmitry Bivol ended up defeating that of an Artur Beterbiev, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I'm also going to mention some of the qualities that both fighters have, in my personal view, to counter the other fighter and what certain flaws they may make. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's see this video by Undisputed Top Rank Boxing. Let's see what happens.
Undisputed. A single word that calls to mind legendary titans. A single word that once achieved assures an everlasting legacy. It's been over 20 years since the light heavyweight division has boasted such a giant.
You're watching a master at work.
But the wait is finally over.
A thunderous punch from Beterbiev.
Knockout merchant Artur Beterbiev puts his perfect record on the line.
One of the fights that I was watching in order to analyze my fight prediction for this fight was that of the Artur Beterbiev versus Marcus Brown fight. And one thing that I have noticed about Artur Beterbiev is that, and as I'm sure a certain amount of you have noticed as well, he is a little bit stiff sometimes with that of his head movement. Sometimes he does not always change levels well. Now, he changes levels, to a certain degree, especially when he's going in there with the jab and when he wants to get in the right hand. So he does move his head. It's just not all the time, and he could do it a little bit better. That being stated, Dmitry Bivol is not a person that also changes levels super well either. Both of these guys, even though they're great Soviet fighters, you can tell that there's a little bit of that effect there, which happens with a lot of Eastern European fighters other than the Ukrainians, that they are a little bit stiff at times, at least with their head movement. Now, Dmitry Bivol, he kind of moves his head in a little bit of a different way. He will move it from side to side, but Dmitry Bivol's defense is mainly his high guard, but he will move his head back. He will back up. He will use certain pull counters, when it comes down to it. And when it comes to Mr. Beterbiev, he might change his level of head a little bit more, but Dmitry Bivol usually likes to keep his guard up a little bit more. But in that Marcus Brown fight, from what I remember being a relatively competitive fight, and it was in moments, but I was actually relatively impressed with Artur Beterbiev and his ability to avoid certain punches in coming his way. Not necessarily always moving his head, but, at least defending to a certain degree, at least in a better fashion. And the thing that Dmitry Bivol is really going to have to watch out for, the thing that actually both of these fighters are really going to have to watch out for is the stabbing jab to the body. And I think that that's something that Artur Beterbiev can take advantage of. That's one of the reasons why I am very, very, very marginally selecting Artur Beterbiev in order to beat that of Dmitry Bivol. Because Dmitry Bivol, even though he's a great all-around boxer, one of the things that I do say about Dmitry Bivol, or that I have noticed, is that he doesn't appear to at least have a super great body attack. And one thing that Artur Beterbiev does have is that he likes to go to the head, he likes to go to the body, he likes to go to basically wherever he wants to go in order to wear you down. Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, they're both great boxers, but they have a different style. Dmitry Bivol, of course, has that pendulum step, and what he wants to do is that he pretty much wants to outbox you, throughout a thorough 12 rounds. If the knockout comes, it comes. He wants to keep you behind that lead hand and that lead jab. He has a great lead hand and a great jab. One of the best jabs in all of boxing, probably in boxing history, to be quite honest with you. And Artur Beterbiev has a great jab as well. But Artur Beterbiev is not a guy that that basically, wants to fight to go the full 12 rounds, or, basically he realizes the level of power that he has. And Artur Beterbiev has what I would call a quote-unquote pebble in the water, or, or a pebble in the pail type of style. And what I mean by that is that, for example, if you have a pail, overall with water, and the pebbles end up getting in there, with each and every single punch that Artur Beterbiev is going to throw, is going to be another pebble in that pail. Meaning what? That you may not quite feel it as much as first, but after a while you are going to feel the power, you are going to feel the punches, and your body is going to start to wear down. You're still going to start to hurt a little bit more. You're going to start to feel the punches as they gradually go along. Artur Beterbiev does not have to hit you very hard in order for you to feel that level of power. And a lot of the times where Artur Beterbiev starts that is with the stabbing jab to that of the body, so he can open it up a little bit more. And Dmitry Bivol is going to have to be very careful. He's oftentimes very good at keeping distance and establishing range with his opponents, but he's going to have to really, really, really make sure that he stays off the ropes against that of an Artur Beterbiev. He's going to have to really make sure that, because Artur Beterbiev, if he does get Dmitry Bivol up against the ropes, I guarantee you more than likely that he's going to make the most of that situation. And one thing that I will say that worries me a little bit about Dmitry Bivol within this fight, even though his high guard is very, very good, one thing that I noticed about Dmitry Bivol is that he doesn't appear overall to tie up opponents at least super duper well. He uses his feet to a great degree, and on top of that, he backs up and establishes distance very well. But he's going to be fighting a fighter that is going to be just as big as him, probably even a little bit bigger than him. And on top of that, he's going to be fighting a guy that is around the same length as him. Now, Dmitry Bivol has fought a lot of guys, that are either slightly bigger than him or have around the same length as him. But it's going to be a different level of machine. Artur Beterbiev, once again, even if you are using that high guard, it doesn't matter. Some of his punches are going to get through. And when he does punch that at Dmitry Bivol, I guarantee you that unless Dmitry Bivol is able to hurt Artur Beterbiev, which he very well could, it's very, very possible. Dmitry Bivol has A-grade level punching power as well. But Dmitry Bivol is going to have to really try and keep this fight in the middle of the ring. And he's going to have to try to occupy the vacated space, which at times, in my view, he could do a little bit better. And by occupying the vacated space, what I mean is that when your opponent is pressuring you up against the ropes, not only are you moving out of the way, but at times you know how to get your opponent to the opposite side, and you know overall, once again, how to switch positions. I'm not quite sure if Dmitry Bivol can do that quite as well as some other fighters as I've seen, such as an Alexander Usyk or a Terence Crawford or certain other fighters like that. We'll see if he really knows how to do that, because he is going to have to do that, in my view, in order to win this fight against Mr. Artur Beterbiev. And on top of that, he is going to have to tie him up at certain times, and he's going to have to make sure that Artur Beterbiev does not get a lot of punches off in the corner and does not get off some of that dirty boxing, because that's what Artur Beterbiev is going to be looking for.
sparring partner compare sparring with me and car accident.
The most dangerous puncher in the game is ready to close the show.
Right there is what Artur Beterbiev is going to be looking for. And Dmitry Bivol, once again, he's going to have to be very careful that he does not back up in a super straight linear line, which at times sometimes can happen. He's going to have to be a little bit careful. But Dmitry Bivol actually has great lateral movement. He moves laterally very, very well, especially with his feet. So we'll see what happens.
Against another undefeated champion, gifted technician Dmitry Bivol.
He's a boxing robot in there.
Doesn't matter which name he has belt, I wanna fight him.
An unstoppable force.
Big exchange. Oh! He gets him again!
Meets the immovable object.
Oh, huge shot.
He has
That overhand right there that you see that Dmitry Bivol throws, that's going to be one of the main punches that Artur Beterbiev is going to have to watch out for. And Bivol is also going to have to watch out for the incoming right hook and right cross that Beterbiev is going to try to get, especially when he throws a jab, a right hand, or Bivol tries to back him up. If he does try to back him up at certain times, Beterbiev is going to try to sneak in that little stabbing hook right there, bend down to his left and then get that right hook in there. So he's going to have to be very careful about that. But that right hand right there, that might be Dmitry Bivol's best weapon, at least in terms of a power punch against that of an Artur Beterbiev. Because I guarantee you one thing that Dmitry Bivol is going to try to do, he's going to try to get his jab out there for a feint or for a fake. He's going to try to get Artur Beterbiev to overextend. He's going to throw another jab in his face, or he's going to try and parry, or he's going to try and, counter that jab over the top with a good right hand to the face and then get out of range. So Artur Beterbiev is going to have to be very careful with that, and he's also going to have to be very careful that he doesn't get dropped. So my analysis or my recommendations for both fighters, change levels at certain times, but it's going to be interesting because neither of those fighters have done that exceptionally well within that of the past. So we'll see.
2 arms, he has 2 legs.
Speed from Bivol, it's just a level up.
He's the human.
And that, of course, was against Gilberto Ramirez. But another one of the things that I want to say about Dmitry Bivol, and I apologize for talking so much early on, one of the things I want to say about Dmitry Bivol, he also does not appear to be a great body puncher. And I'm not stating that he doesn't do this at times, but Artur Beterbiev, once again, he does go to the body quite a bit. He is going to go to Dmitry Bivol's body, which will eventually, in my personal view, open up Dmitry Bivol's head a little bit more. But we'll see. We'll see.
The same human like me and everybody.
Dmitry Bivol, once again, he's going to want to go to Artur Beterbiev's body, especially with that stabbing jab, double jab, and on top of that, use that overhand right, use that right hand to the body. Do not be afraid to go to the body. You're going to have to go to the body against Artur Beterbiev, just like how Canelo Alvarez did against Gennady Triple G Golovkin.
Beterbiev is bowling right now.
You can prepare 100 times in gym, but you can not do it that in the ring,
That was a cracker by Beterbiev.
It's mean like Mike Tyson said, everyone will have a plan before they get punched.
Beterbiev with a sledgehammer finish.
Now I see my way to my goal.
Bivol is a master technician.
To undisputed.
Let's first welcome one of the supreme technicians in boxing today. Please welcome Dmitry Bivol.
When I signed the contract, I had this in my mind. Why I'm signing contract? What I want from this professional career? Do I want to just earn money to get some couple fights? No.
Bivol opening up now.
What the reason I will fight? What is the maximum? The maximum is to collect all belts. Okay, this is my maximum.
Now let's welcome to the stage a champion who has knocked out every man that he has faced. Artur Beterbiev.
A normal human, and yet I have to be excited.
Trying to come over the...
Keep in mind that when it comes to both of these fighters, and a big part of the reason why this fight also, in my personal view, has a certain amount of appeal, we really don't know how this fight is going to go. Because when you take a look at both Beterbiev and that of Dmitry Bivol, I'm not saying that every single fight in their career that they've made their opponents look destitute, but Dmitry Bivol has pretty much dominated every single opponent that he's ever had in his career, even including Canelo Alvarez and Gilberto Ramirez. I mean, I remember when that fight was looked at as a 50-50 fight. I think that I predicted Dmitry Bivol to win that fight by decision, and I said that it was a 60-40 fight in favor of Bivol, and I mean, to be quite honest with you, he made Gilberto Zeta Ramirez look like a complete amateur. A complete amateur. And a guy that was a cruiserweight, by the way. A guy that really should have been fighting at the cruiserweight division. And Dmitry Bivol was moving him around like it was nothing. So once again, Dmitry Bivol, he has more power than what a lot of people like to say that he does.
Top of the right hand. That's it. It's over.
I'm not emotional in front of people, but of course I'm exciting. It's my goal to be a unified world champion.
You look at his body of work, nobody lasts 12 rounds. Every time you turn on the television, my phone would ring and friends from all over the world would call me and say...
And of course, Mr. Artur Beterbiev, he's knocked out every single opponent that he's ever been in the ring with. And of course, for those of you that are not familiar with either of their resumes, Dmitry Bivol, of course, on his resume, he has guys like Sullivan Barrera, Canelo Alvarez, Joe Smith Jr., Gilberto Zeta Ramirez, John Pascal, and a couple of others. When you talk about Artur Beterbiev, he has Callum Smith, he has Adam Marcus Brown, he has Alexander Vozdik, he has Joe Smith Jr. There might even be a couple of other opponents that I'm not personally thinking of either. But both of these guys have a pretty good resume for the light heavyweight division. And Artur Beterbiev has been able to run through everyone so far, and knock them out, even in some of his more troubling fights. And Dmitry Bivol, I wouldn't say that he has quite the resume as an Artur Beterbiev for the light heavyweight division. But, he's also been able to relatively dominate his opponents quite well as well. So this is going to be a very interesting fight.
Who is this monster?
Artur Beterbiev is a wrecking machine. But this guy, I believe, is pound for pound the top fighter potentially in the sport. Now there will be no arguments that the victor is the king of the division. And that's what we want in the sport of boxing.
While these two men have been destined to clash for years, their epic confrontation would endure a 4-month delay until October 12th.
When I was in amateur boxing, I heard about him. That there is one guy, men national team, his name is Artur Beterbiev. He was one of the leaders. I look at him and I try to learn something for me. He moved to pro, I moved to pro, and I know that. And one day we could meet each other in the ring.
Never remember this. In the future I will have fight with him or something. Something I remember, something I don't remember.
We have different characters and we are from different generations. This also makes sense why you are not friendly. He's very serious, he is a hard worker, he has a good technique, he has a good power, he has everything.
Pretty much every Russian fighter that I've ever personally seen has been a very serious hard worker. I don't know one Russian that I've ever seen, whether it be inside the UFC or that of boxing, that wasn't a complete work machine, or wasn't someone that was usually completely serious about whooping ass. Those Russians, boy, I tell you what, they're not something to mess around with. And this is going to be a very interesting fight.
Be a good fighter.
Artur Beterbiev is perhaps the most dangerous puncher in all of boxing. He is a Russian destroyer.
Absolutely. Now, when you talk about Artur Beterbiev, I'm not quite sure if I would state that he has as great a one-punch knockout power as, say, a Gervonta Tank Davis or that of a Deontay Wilder. When you talk about those two fighters, or a Naoya Inoue, I would say that those fighters, at least in terms of one-shot knockout power, that debatably that, they have, overall debatably the greater one-shot knockout power. But, to be honest with you, that could be a little bit of a debate because, to be honest with you, Artur Beterbiev, he doesn't really try to get you with just one shot. Artur Beterbiev breaks you down over time. What Artur Beterbiev kind of is, at least when his offense is on point, he's like a better version of a David Benavidez, in my personal view. And he's more multi-dimensional in my personal view than David Benavidez. But anyway.
Favorite against anybody he fights.
Beterbiev learned the status of favorite only gets you so far when he was thrust into a firefight against the...
But one thing in my view that cannot be debated is that Artur Beterbiev does have to be stated as the best finisher in all of boxing, at least at the current moment in time. Or the most dominant debatable fighter in all of boxing.
Brave Anthony Yard.
Or most dominant knockout artist.
An opponent unafraid to come forward in exchange. The champion had to dig deep.
We've seen him be flawless in the ring, undefeated, knocked out every single opponent. Who is going to test him? Enter Anthony Yard.
Good shot by Anthony Yard.
Amazing physicality, Anthony Yarde. Heavy puncher, known to be a destructive knockout merchant.
Beterbiev making mistakes. Yarde has got to punish him.
This was a highly anticipated matchup. Yarde was the younger man.
You know, for those of you that remember, Anthony Yarde, when he was going in the ring against Artur Beterbiev, some of the LDBC and new media channels that I tend to review at certain times, they were claiming all this stuff about how Anthony Yarde was going to be such a problem for Artur Beterbiev because of his athleticism and because of his quote-unquote slick style. But then keep in mind that when Anthony Yarde was undefeated and defeated that, or excuse me, got defeated by that of Sergey the Crusher Kovalev, they tried to make it seem like Sergey the Crusher Kovalev was completely washed up and that, you know, overall that he was completely done as a fighter by the time that Canelo had fought him. Even though Sergey the Crusher Kovalev was coming off of wins over Eleider Alvarez and Anthony Yarde, and Sergey Kovalev had completely dominated him. Now, is it true that Sergey Kovalev was not quite the same fighter as before? Yes, of course. But to state that he was just completely done, no, you can't be completely done when you're a champion in the sport. That makes no sense. But it is what it is. Anyway, I mean, not unless, you know, once again, you're like Manny Pacquiao when he fought Yordenis Ugas and he was coming off like a 2-year layoff or something.
He's fresh.
And on top of that, like 43 years old.
Sure, he's fit.
Great left hand again from Yarde. That's been the punch for him so far.
First round always like, you know, you do some check like how he's going, like what he do. You let him do something.
Beterbiev has a habit of growing into fights. If there are vulnerabilities, they are early.
As you can see, Artur Beterbiev at times gets hit with that right hand. He's going to have to be very careful because Dmitry Bivol can possibly knock him on his ass, especially if he runs right into it. And one of the punches that Artur Beterbiev does kind of lunge with is going to be that lead hand jab, which is one of his better punches. But at times, he has both feet off the ground, meaning that if he does get hit with something, he's going to be a little bit off balance, and he's going to be vulnerable to get hit because he's not going to be able to move when both of his feet are off the ground. So he's going to be very careful with that. That's something that Dmitry Bivol might be able to take an advantage of if he establishes distance correctly.
Yarde was a big puncher. Could he put a dent in Beterbiev?
Yarde's had a lot of success early.
Could Beterbiev stand up to that big right hand of Anthony Yarde?
That's made Beterbiev go back a bit. That was a cracker.
We'll start with jabs, good war like with jabs. First round, you know.
Just started to find that jab with a bit more regularity, the champion.
What makes Artur Beterbiev great TV is that he's vulnerable too.
To the armor of the great Russian champion.
And early in that fight against
Gonna have to very much watch out for that punch, Mr. Artur Beterbiev, because Dmitry Bivol is going to be throwing that. Now, for what I will state for a warning for Mr. Dmitry Bivol is that sometimes he needs to be careful with his combinations. Because sometimes he'll throw combinations and he will have both hands down, or he'll throw them a little bit too long, which in return will give the opponent an opportunity overall to possibly counter. He's going to have to be a little bit careful with that. And trust me, you do not want to get hit by a counter on the inside with Artur Beterbiev. So he's going to have to hit, you know, throw a few punches, get outside of the range.
Yarde, he was rocked by a few shots.
Or put that high guard up.
Yarde's having most success with those short left hooks and the uppercuts. That seems to be the way for him.
What's extraordinary about Beterbiev, he weathered a huge hail of bullets, if you like, from the fists of Yarde in the earlier rounds.
Beterbiev's pace. Good left hook from Yarde.
We want to keep him to this position like all these 7 rounds.
40, he knows, he senses that he's hurt the champion here.
But come the 8th round, he sensed the killing time.
He can turn the fight in an instant, Beterbiev.
For that punch, like I see his like window to punch there.
Way with that jab. Anthony Yarde caught. Anthony Yarde.
Once again, Dmitry Bivol is going to have to be very careful because that's going to be a punch that Artur Beterbiev also looks for. They're both going to be looking for that right hand and also for the lead hand jab. That's going to be their two most impactful weapons more than likely throughout this fight, or they're going to be looking for it. But they're going to be looking for it in a little bit of different ways. Artur Beterbiev is going to wait for Dmitry Bivol to open up his guard, more than likely up against the ropes, and he's going to wait to time that right hand to get him right down the middle. And Bivol is going to have to be very, very careful. As for Artur Beterbiev, the time that Dmitry Bivol more than likely is going to be looking for it is after he feints with the jab or after he fakes with the jab. And he's going to be waiting for Artur Beterbiev to potentially overextend so he can then throw another jab or possibly get that right hand over the top with a pull counter.
Artur Beterbiev's straight right hand is one of the best punches in all of boxing.
A thunderous punch from Beterbiev.
He was always one shot away from bringing the momentum back to himself.
Beterbiev can sense the finish, and it's all over.
Beterbiev is a freight train that runs you over, and even when he's going through adversity, he'll find a way to get...
Absolutely, and not only is he a freight train, but he's a very intelligent freight train. He's a dude that has excellent stamina, as does Dmitry Bivol. He's a freight train once again that can box. Now, of course, is he a little bit stiff at times, as it's been shown here? Yeah, you know, he can be hit with that right hand, but at the end of the day, you know, overall, he still is a very relatively intelligent fighter. So Dmitry Bivol is going to have to be very careful here. He's going to have to try to go to the body. He's going to have to really use that lead hand. In my view, use that stabbing lead hand to the body. Occupy the vacated space. And don't be afraid to tie up Artur Beterbiev, but don't stay in the exchanges too long. You know, certain people, they stay in the exchanges way too long or up against the ropes way too long. And if Dmitry Bivol believes that he's just going to stay up against the ropes with this high guard and that's going to work the whole entire time, I guarantee you that more than likely is not going to work. Because Artur Beterbiev is going to be looking for that stabbing lead hand to the body. He's also going to be looking for an uppercut through the guard, which at times we did see Canelo Alvarez land against Dmitry Bivol in their fight. So we'll see.
Out of it.
One of the most critical forms of adversity in the ring, fear.
I think everyone have fear, but someone control, someone not. I remember some coaches say when his boxer fear, if he control, fear. It look better than like good boxer, but without fear, you know?
Beterbiev just stalking, looking for his opportunities, looking for a mistake.
I never...
That's a great quote. You know, something that Novak Djokovic actually said something very similar. Of course, the all-time great tennis player. In my view, the greatest tennis player that I've seen. Novak Djokovic said the same thing. For those of you that don't remember, Novak Djokovic was known in the early part of his career for kind of blowing certain games or not having the best of stamina or, you know, not being, you know, the greatest, you know, legitimate champion. Of course, he won his first title, I believe, in the Australian Open in 2008. But eventually, Novak Djokovic not only would be remembered as a great champion, but debatably the most mentally tough champion, because of course he would be known for getting himself out of certain spots and clutching so many big time moments in his career. But Novak Djokovic said something similar. I believe that he said something along the lines of, it isn't that the fear or it isn't that the stress isn't there, it's just that you find a way to deal with it a little bit better and deal with the pressure more. So there's always pressurized situations, there's always a little bit of that fear, but finding the way to deal with it in the best way possible and also finding a way to still be effective under that fear is where you're going to be at your best.
I will not fight with him or I don't want to fight with him. No, boxing for me it's like a business. It's individual sport. Anybody in my weight class could be my opponent. It's just time. Time will come and we will fight.
My goodness, he's hurt though.
Everyone have fear. Who doesn't have fear is not human.
Look at him go! Oh my word, Bivol!
I treat him as one of the serious opponents in my career, the most dangerous opponent.
Artur, is this the biggest challenge?
As you should, Mr. Dmitry Bivol, because this dude is going to be a completely different test than what you've ever had in your career. But we'll see.
So far, I'm not...
And that also goes for Mr. Artur Beterbiev as well. Dmitry Bivol is going to be a completely different level of opponent than Artur Beterbiev has ever fought.
Thinking I will prepare for this fight. Try to be ready for 100%. Why now?
Yeah.
I think you need to ask Bivol. Why now?
To be honest, of course, if I see that it's not good opponent, it will be not good for career.
He's always telling some different stories about he will fight, not fighting. Always open for this fight.
I'm a very patient person. One day I will reach that point when I get what I want. Now I'm getting fight for belts. This is my dream. This is what I wanted. This is my goal, to be undisputed champion. And now I'm getting this fight.
I'm not dreaming about it, you know. If it's gonna happen, yes, I'm happy. Think another goal, you know, to be excited. But you need to control this everything, emotional. Like.
With a combined.
I think Russians maybe have about maybe one of two emotions. I don't think it's super hard for them. And of course, I'm just playing around. But I agree overall with what Artur Beterbiev is mainly saying. I agree a lot with that mindset that we must learn to control our fear, and on top of that, our emotions, because if you don't learn how to control them, then they can take control of you, especially in the fight game.
Record 43-0. Both fighters are accustomed to controlling an overmatched opponent in the ring.
We're working on different strategy, different punches, like movements.
I try to notice everything, but sometimes you couldn't. Sometimes you could punch.
Not just punch someone.
I don't think about his time is done or my generation.
If you're doing gym hard work like you do 400% prepare, you're gonna be successful, I think.
If you don't have...
A big question will be about Mr. Artur Beterbiev's age. Now, Dmitry Bivol, I'm not really quite sure how old he is, but I do believe that he is several years younger than Artur Beterbiev, at least, you know, by a little bit. If I had to guess, Dmitry Bivol, he's probably around 34, you know, maybe 35 years old. Artur Beterbiev's around 39 to 40 years old, I believe. So once again, it's going to be interesting. And of course, he did suffer an injury that made him pull out of this fight in the first part of this year. So will that possibly affect him? We'll see.
Have the ability to box and move, to stand and trade at times, to have a great chin. Artur's going to run through you, and it's going to take someone very, very special to beat him. His name is Dmitry Bivol, and he's built for this moment.
I just know that now I have enough skills to be undisputed champion.
I'm not thinking about...
You definitely do, Mr. Dmitry Bivol. But you're going to have to be very careful within this fight. Once again, you're going to have to move and move intelligently. You're going to have to hold Artur Beterbiev at certain times. But then you're going to have to push him off of you, and you're going to have to make sure that he does not get a whole lot of shots on the inside. Once again, the thing that scares me a little bit about Dmitry Bivol and certain things is that sometimes he lets himself get up against the ropes a little bit too often. And he has a great defense, especially with that high guard. But I just don't know if that high guard, especially if he doesn't tie up Artur Beterbiev quite enough within this fight, I don't know if that's going to be enough for a defense with this fight against Artur Beterbiev, but we'll see.
My reputation, or I'm always focused for my training, you know.
There's a right hand to the body from Beterbiev. Did you hear that?
I prepared for be luck, you know.
Luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
You have to be good to be lucky, like everyone prepared for good, but sometimes
I agree.
And they need luck too.
Oh, that was a powerful shot.
I'm luck because my opponent not luck that day. Everyone prepared for be good, you know, but sometimes they need luck too. I mean, most of time we need luck too.
The thing is,
well, what Dmitry Bivol, in my personal view, is going to need in order to defeat that of an Artur Beterbiev, what he's going to have to do is that he's going to have to show Artur Beterbiev very early that he's not going to take over on, once again, him just completely pressuring him. That, you know, that he's just not going to back him up throughout the whole entire fight. Pretty much what a Terrence Bud Crawford was able to do against Errol Spence Jr. and what a Canelo was able to do against a Gennady Chupacika Golovkin in the rematch. That he's not just going to sit there, but at the same time, you know, when it comes down to, he is going to have to move around, you know, relatively intelligently well. Because if the fight is too close, then in my view, it will go to that of Artur Beterbiev.
luck does not get you to 20-0. Luck does not give to you a 100% knockout ratio. Luck does not grant a fighter calm and control when their face is bloody and busted.
A lot of people look at him and see raw power and roughness, but I can see his sophistication of his boxing at that point.
Agreed 100%. Artur Beterbiev is a more sophisticated boxer than people give him credit for, and Dmitry Bivol is a greater athlete than what a lot of people give him credit for. Once again, this is not just a fight against two one-dimensional fighters. These fighters can fight in a multitude of ways, at least in my personal view, and they're going to be extremely, extremely dangerous.
And how good he can be. His commitment, we don't lose time with stupidity with him. Like, he's really focused on his job.
I always try to be ready 100%, always to be ready for 12 rounds, maybe 13.
Really focus on what he's doing for performance. Every single decision that he's taken a day is for performance.
I never fight like half prepared for half fight. No, I always prepared for 12 rounds.
2 years ago, the boxing world had a chance to see a bout featuring the one common opponent Beterbiev and Bivol would share, the gritty, powerful Joe Smith Jr. A Against Bivol, Smith pushed the champ all the way through 12 rounds. Against Beterbiev, not so much.
This looked like a great fight. Joe Smith Jr., big, strong, powerful, aggressive, loves to come forward. The perfect foil, though, for Beterbiev.
Good luck. Puncher versus puncher.
He has ambition. He angry, you know.
Joe Smith is a really dangerous puncher. We saw him wobble Dmitry Bivol, so we knew Beterbiev was going to be facing some danger in.
He did wobble Dmitry Bivol. And for those of you that don't know the punch that he's talking about, Joe Smith Jr. was able to hit Dmitry Bivol, I believe, with an overhand right. Because Dmitry Bivol at times does drop his left hand. Even though he usually does have a great high guard, he's got to be very, very careful. And on top of that, he doesn't change levels extraordinarily well. Now, of course, Beterbiev also does not change levels extraordinarily well. But Bivol's going to have to watch out for that.
That fight.
Joe Smith is doing the right thing by pressing the issue, trying to set the tone and trying to get a shot through.
I had 2 belts. He had 1 belt. It's unification fight. It's very big motivation for a young guy, you know.
There's a right hand from Beterbiev.
Joe Smith Jr. once the first bell rang, the game plan went out the window.
It's a heavy shot. It's a clubbing shot.
Oh, off balance. That's a slip.
He thought,
Well, there's no offense against Joe Smith Jr., but pretty much anyone who's been watching Joe Smith Jr., even though he's a relatively good boxer, he pretty much is a brawler. And Joe Smith Jr. is a relatively good B-grade level fighter, but he's not a guy that's ever going to be the best of that weight class. It just is what it is. Now, I do believe that he's been a champion a couple of times in his career, so I still give him credit. He's a very good he's a relatively good brawler, but is he a great boxer? No.
Make it a dogfight.
Power punchers, they just don't punch at the target. They punch through the target.
We have planned since first round, like we do, and everything is going well.
Beterbiev's more like a steam engine. It's chugging uphill.
Once again, man, that stabbing jab to the body, that's going to be a punch that Dmitry Bivol has to watch throughout the whole entire fight.
After the first few rounds.
And I just continue, to do our plan, you know.
Smith coming forward behind the jabs. Oh! Off balance and scores the knockdown, does Beterbiev!
Joe Smith Jr. already on wobbly legs from the knockdown in round 1. And it's a scary thought to look up into the opposing corner and see Artur Beterbiev looking back at you.
And that was at the end of the first round. The writing was already on the wall.
Look at this on the inside here in round 2.
Beterbiev was so patient. He let Joe Smith apply all the pressure, and I'm sure Smith was thinking that his best...
Bivol's going to have to be very careful as well, once again, that his combinations are not too long. Because if he stays there within the range a little bit too much and throws like a 5-punch combination and keeps both hands down, if Beterbiev returns fire with one of those good rights or a good left hook, Bivol could potentially get knocked down in this fight. So we'll see.
Hands was to get Beterbiev out of there early.
In return, Beterbiev once again is going to have to be very careful, especially when he lunges forward with that lead hand. Because Bivol has great lateral foot movement when it comes down to it and body movement. So he's going to have to be very, very careful, or what I mean by lateral body movement, of course, is that Bivol moves very laterally, his whole body, of course, well with his feet. He moves laterally very, very well. So Beterbiev's going to have to watch out for that.
Big exchange. Oh! He gets him again!
He's so dangerous from so many angles. He is looking to finish his opponent.
There's a hook. There's an uppercut. Beterbiev's on the attack. Joe Smith is crumbling again into the ropes.
I show him, go here and punch here,
Joe Smith, he's a sitting duck to get knocked out.
He might sit back and box. He might take shots himself, but he's looking to finish. He's got the weapons, and that overhand right is one of them.
Another right hand. Uppercut. Big uppercut. He is stumbling, and this is over.
He's a scary man. You don't want to fight this guy, and if you have to, you're going to have to stick to your game plan. Joe Smith Jr. paid the price.
There is a lot of a good fighter, but usually they have one piece of the puzzle missing. They are good or not that much discipline, or big discipline, but not that good. Artur have that complete package.
In my professional amateur career, a long time, I see guys before they get some big tournament or some belts or something, they already believe they are greatest. It's big mistake they did. And
Once again, for those of you that are not aware, both Mr. Artur Beterbiev and that of Dmitry Bivol, they have an excellent, and a very extensive and long background pedigree in terms of the amateurs. Both of them have great wins within that of the amateurs. I'm not sure if they ever fought each other in the amateurs, but both of them, overall, you know, they're both very, very devastating in terms of not only their athleticism and in terms of their boxing ability, but they've seen many different styles. They were both very great boxers within that of the amateurs. I believe that Beterbiev, of course, was a gold medalist.
Maybe that's why I don't want to do this mistake.
But if I'm wrong, of course, someone correct me. But I believe that Artur Beterbiev was a gold medalist.
Beterbiev's opponents find that mistakes often lead to their swift demise in the form of a knockout. But nearly 3 years ago, it was Beterbiev who almost made a costly mistake. A slow start against Marcus Browne put the Russian's perfect record in peril.
Marcus Browne popping that jab early from the southpaw stance.
Beterbiev was conscious that he was losing rounds.
Not a lot of jabs from Beterbiev.
Well, rewatching that fight, in my personal view, the fight was not really as bad for Beterbiev as what people were trying to really say. And of course, the reason why his record was in jeopardy is because I believe in round 3 or round 4, there was a very, very bad head clash to where if it would have went to the scorecards, potentially, overall Beterbiev, you know, maybe could have potentially lost that fight had it went to the scorecards early. But the thing is that Beterbiev is not always considered, you know, he's not always worrying about, you know, or considering winning every single part of the first round. You know, once again, what he basically wants to do is, like I said, he wants to put pebbles in that bucket. That's what he wants to do. He wants to put stones in that bucket. You know, he realizes that it may not, you know, all come to fruition within the first round, but after a while, if he keeps hitting you, is going to. So that's why I say Dmitry Bivol, he's going to have to be careful to make sure that as little rocks as possible overall get in that bucket. He's going to have to make sure to defend to the body relatively well, hit Artur Beterbiev back, and push him back. In my view, once again, if you're Bivol, you do not want Beterbiev pressuring throughout the majority of this fight.
But that he had his confidence in his own ability that he could claw the fight back.
He might lose some in the early rounds, but that doesn't mean that he's losing control of the fight.
This was the most adversity Beterbiev had ever faced.
That cut is pouring blood.
I'm not quite sure about that. I'm not quite sure if that's the most amount of adversity that Beterbiev has ever faced. I think that the most amount of adversity that he's probably ever faced has been that of Alexander Gvozdyk. But, you know, I mean, Marcus Browne definitely gave him a run for his money early, though.
Forehead of Beterbiev.
I mean, that cut was disgusting. It was right in...
Marcus Browne actually was a very, very decently great boxer when he was still active. Of course, his first loss was against that of Jean Pascal. You know, I believe because it went to the scorecards early. But Jean Pascal was able to knock him down, I believe, a couple of times. So, very competitive fight, very great fight. But that was his first loss. And then, of course, he came back, and it was a decently awaited fight between himself and Mr. Artur Beterbiev. And I was also curious myself as to how Artur Beterbiev was going to handle him. And, you know, he got hit a little bit within that fight. But, you know, of course, eventually he was able to pull through.
Middle of his forehead.
When I get cut, my blood is not stop. It's bleeding.
Hard body shot from Beterbiev.
And this is where Dmitry Bivol is going to have to try to make sure that he's not at. You have to get off the ropes against Artur Beterbiev. If you have to hold him, if you have to tie him up. If you have to push him back, use that lead hand, then that's what you have to do. Overall, at least, you know, at certain times, you know, when you're not completely stuck up against the ropes and he can, you know, throw one over the top when you're too vulnerable. But Dmitry Bivol is going to have to always make sure that he stays off the ropes, or at least that he stays off the ropes for a certain amount of time.
Back downstairs with the left hand.
When you prepare for a fight, for like, you know, different scenarios, some things, like, you need to be ready for that.
Beterbiev is a tough man to contend with.
Beterbiev is studying, downloading data, and eventually he is going to find a way to knock you out.
Beterbiev, this is where he wants to be. He wants to keep his guy trapped in the rope.
And as you can tell here, once again, Beterbiev is not landing all these punches flush. But that's why I say it doesn't matter with Beterbiev. That's why I'm saying that's why I compare it to pebbles in the pail. Because once again, you know, at first it doesn't seem all that much, but eventually that pail is going to get heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And he is eventually, if you keep letting him hit on you, he is going to wear out your arms. He is going to wear out your body. He is going to wear you out to the point to where eventually some of those punches are going to get through. And then you're going to get surprised by one of those, and then your body is basically going to give out on you. So Bivol's going to have to be very careful. But that being stated, once again, Bivol has great power as well.
He found a home for the left hook to the body.
You can just hear the power of Beterbiev.
The sound of those punches, you're talking about someone banging a bass drum.
20 seconds left to go in the round as Beterbiev finding some openings.
I remember he get for liver when I go to head, he already there. He already down.
Diaz, you heard. Good shot to the body.
Left hook to the body.
He's always dangerous to the head, but it was actually the time that he invested in the body that actually started the beginning of the end.
And again, to Marcus Brown's credit, he's hurt, but he's trying to make adjustments.
Again, showed off his impressive combination punching.
Beterbiev all over him.
He just dug a hole for Brown. He dismantled Brown. He took his soul, if you like.
How much more?
Well, Beterbiev is basically taking everybody's soul. The certain amount of fighters that have fought Artur Beterbiev, they've never been quite the same after they have fought him because he puts such a beating on you. And it's once again, it's not even like it's a Deontay Wilder or Gervonta Tank Davis situation or an Naoya Inoue situation where they basically just knock you out with one shot. Artur Beterbiev is a guy to where, he might have just as much power as those guys for their particular weight classes. But it's like Artur Beterbiev, he just hits you with once again, little rocks, overall. And then eventually they feel like boulders. So, Artur Beterbiev, he just taps you, overall over the certain amount of the fight. But he's still so powerful to where overall it still has an effect. To where to the point eventually, once he starts to get you in a position that he wants you to get you in, he can really put the damage on you.
I do just try to do my job.
He like to challenge himself. He don't do that for other people. He like to challenge himself. He like to push himself to see how far he can go, what he can realize, and he believe in himself.
When I came to gym, my goal is to be good boxer, and I'm always every day try to do something for that.
That burning desire was sparked by early success and then burnished in tragedy.
In beginning, when I was starting practice box, my father doesn't like what I do. I go to study in school, university, And when I get one bronze medal in championship in cadet, like when I was 15 or 16, he gave me his blessing, He really proud or happy about his son, and he died after a couple days after that.
With the passing of his father, Artur leaned on his mother for support and guidance.
My mom's still working. She was nurse. My father is a driver. But that time we lost him, and it's big tragedy for us. It's a difficult time, I remember that. And I don't want to continue box like that time. My mom asked me to continue, and I'm here. It comes to my brain, he's worrying about me every day. That's why he tell me go. I try to be ready for any fight.
The belt that you've wanted for so long, Artur. Since 2017, you wanted to keep collecting the belts. How do you feel seeing it there and going into this fight? Do you just see just another opponent? This is an unbeaten champion.
Like you say, I'm collecting belts and I need one more. If we see Beterbiev's fights,
and there's another right hand to the body from Beterbiev.
You could see that he used a lot.
Once again, Dmitry Bivol, one of the things that he does that in my view is relatively good, but he's going to have to do it in a better way than what Gvozdyk did there and not get trapped up against the ropes, is that when he does hold his lead hand out there, Beterbiev is going to try to throw that overhand right. But I assume that Bivol is going to defend that a little bit better than what Gvozdyk did. But once again, Dmitry Bivol, stay off the ropes, bro. Stay off those fucking ropes. Because this dude is going to be looking to beat your guts out, on those ropes. So stay off the ropes.
So power is winning with his strength first. Then skills.
Just starting to find that jab.
Then conditioning also. He's a very good fighter and my style is different.
Beterbiev is a tough man to contend with.
we just started to watch his fights, started learning something from some videos.
Is Bivol looking for the knockout? He might get it here in the 12th.
One part of people like...
He moved Gilberto Zeta Ramirez around like he was nothing. And Gilberto Zeta Ramirez was probably about 210 pounds on fight night, if not even a bit more.
Movement, skills, fence, speed.
Bivol just makes it look so easy.
There is not many things we can see because it's like cruise control fight, you know, for Bivol, I mean.
Oh my word, Bivol!
Another part of people loves aggressive fighters.
Beterbiev can do serious damage.
There is something about two chess masters sitting down to the table, searching for the slightest advantage.
This is boxing. This is not depends only on me. It depends on opponent also. He has his own plan also, and you have to be ready to change something in the ring. With boxing, it's every time as improvisation.
I agree with you, Mr. Dmitry Bivol, and that's a great mindset as well. I like the mindset of both of these fighters, and I agree. It is a little bit of improvisation. At the end of the day, there might be certain things that one of these fighters has to change. Who is going to be a little bit more adaptable? We'll see.
And you have to be ready for all situations.
Fighters want to dictate during the fight. When you have removed control, you do what you want on the TV, yeah?
I like to control everything. I don't like to lose control in the ring. If I want to do something, I have to do it perfect.
Oh boy, big heavy punches for Bivol.
This time, two different boxers, they will see each other in the ring. And this is good for all boxing fans. I love challenges. This fight, the huge test for me also.
On October 12th, two champions will face a challenge unlike anything they've seen before.
When you never know how it's going in fight, it's always like different.
One will suffer a crushing first career defeat.
He does it again!
He prepares something for me, or I prepare for him something.
And whoever does potentially lose this fight, I'm not quite sure if they're ever going to be the same fighter ever again. Because if Dmitry Bivol ends up losing, more than likely he's going to suffer a lot of unforgetful damage that he's going to suffer against that of an Artur Beterbiev. And if Dmitry Bivol ends up beating Artur Beterbiev, if Beterbiev loses, I mean, he's about 39 years old, so how much more time does he really have left anyway? We'll see.
Victor, everlasting glory.
Oh my word, Bivol!
He could say whatever he wants. I could say whatever I want.
The crowd wants more of it too!
But only God knows what will happen.
But my team will always try to be ready for some different scenarios.
We try to prepare every aspect and angle that the fight can take.
That was a crack by Beterbiev!
For us, the conclusion is performance.
I will try to do everything to keep my belt, to win his belt, to win him.
Will power prevail?
For me, every fight, very important.
Beterbiev's on the attack!
I want to do every next fight better than last fight.
Bivol is peppering it!
Or strategic savvy?
It helps me every time when I go into the ring.
Dmitry!
I think about, he's the human, same human like me and everybody.
That's it! It's over!
And I want to prove something.
A dominating round!
I'm training from my childhood. I don't know another profession.
It's been all Bivol from the start.
The last fighter standing will be undisputed.
It's not like when you defend your belt.
This is over!
It's different.
But anyways, that pretty much is about it for this video. I just thought that I would talk about that. Once again, who am I predicting to win? I am going with that of Mr. Artur Beterbiev because I do believe that his body attack will be a little bit more constant. I think that his power will eventually get to that of Mr. Dmitry Bivol, assuming though, once again, that his age has not gotten to him and that injury is not too hindering. So we'll see what happens. But what do I, what would I give for advice for both fighters? As for Artur Beterbiev, keep Dmitry Bivol on the ropes. If he tries to tie you up, get a little bit of dirty boxing in there. Dmitry Bivol really loves to use a high guard. Be very careful because after you do throw certain punches into his high guard, he is going to try to hit you, at least at certain times, more than likely in between certain combinations to catch you with an open shot. Don't lunge, you know, forward overall too often. You know, I know that Beterbiev is going to lunge a little bit because that's what he does with his lead hand oftentimes, but be very careful. He is going to move laterally, so Artur Beterbiev is going to have to try to really trap Dmitry Bivol up against the ropes, and also watch out for that overhand right. Dmitry Bivol is going to really try to do that. Do not be lazy with your lead hand, you know, throw it out there and then get it back and then return your hands back to your face. And that's pretty much the advice that I would give Artur Beterbiev. My advice to Dmitry Bivol, use that lead hand throughout the whole entire fight. Do that stabbing jab just like Artur Beterbiev more than likely is going to do throughout the whole entire fight. Try to, of course, get him to overextend and then use that pull counter right that you have. That's a magnificent pull counter. Get him over the top. Do not afraid to be attacked to the body. Do not throw your combinations for too long or keep both hands down at certain times. You know, and on top of that, establish range very well. Occupy the vacated space and do not stay up against the ropes way too long. That would be my advice for both fighters. But we'll see overall what ends up happening. This is going to be a very particularly interesting fight. I would not be surprised if either fighter ended up winning this fight. I could see either fighter getting a stoppage. I could see the fighter dominating this fight. I could see this fight being a draw. I really don't know what's going to happen, but I am going to go with Mr. Artur Beterbiev in this fight, more than likely by unanimous decision or by that of a latter round stoppage. We'll see what happens. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later, and we'll see what happens.